the comedy panel show Laughs on BBC One. Alex Jones and Stacey Dooley among those with tales to tell on Would I Lie to You in half an hour, after Victoria Coren-Mitchell hosts the headline humour.
Good evening and welcome to Have I Got News for You. I'm Victoria Coren-Mitchell. In the news this week, as this year's Chelsea Flower Show gets underway, Alan Titchmarsh perfects his cunning plan to get in without paying. Citizens of the United States are shocked to discover there are worse things you can do to the American flag than burn it. And round the back of Downing Street, Cabinet Ministers go to extreme lengths to get a meeting with Theresa May. On Ian's team tonight is a comedian whose latest show deals with the eternal question of what we experience after death, presumably a blessed relief from Brexit. Please welcome Ahir Shah. And with Paul tonight is a Labour MP who's been described as one of the two funniest people at Westminster. And before that goes to her head, the other one was Philip Hammond. Please welcome Jess Phillips MP. And we start with the bigger stories of the week. Ian and Ahir, take a look at this.
It's the former Prime Minister.
That's the 1922
Parliament.
committee, yeah.
That's the Queen. No, that's Andrea Leadsom. Oh, God.
At time of recording, who's Prime Minister?
Boris Johnson.
It is currently Theresa May.
Oh, right, of course.
But how bad have things got for Theresa May?
There's been another cabinet revolt. She won't even see her main ministers. She's now got a cabinet of two, herself and her husband. Even he's walking out. Everyone's gone. Andrea Leadsom's gone, you saw there.
Do you know what number Andrea Leadsom is on the resignation list under Theresa May? How many have gone?
36.
She's the 36th minister. There's a graph from the BBC.
A graph on a comedy show. This is
This is a graph of ministerial resignations before Theresa May, and here it is with Theresa May on it.
We're at the stage where Andrea Leadsom is described as a heavy hitter. She was a joke 5 minutes ago.
Like, she had that terrible rally. Do you remember, like, Tim Loughton in the street being like, Andrea Leadsom, Andrea Leadsom, and everyone was like, God, what a joke, and now it's like, Andrea Leadsom? She wouldn't be that bad. Let's go for Andrea Leadsom.
But have people forgotten that Andrea Leadsom said that Theresa May couldn't really be Prime Minister because she hadn't had children?
Yeah, as if Theresa May, because she, like, had never evacuated her womb, would definitely take us to nuclear war. that definitely follows. I mean, you're more likely to want to press the big button if you have got kids, I think. They're like a massive pain in the arse.
And how are the 1922 committee trying to encourage Theresa May to leave?
They did a rap.
They're trying to change their rules, which say you can only get a challenge once a year.
They want to do it weekly now.
Yeah.
When is something going to happen?
What, generally in politics?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think by October, something will have happened. I'm not saying it'll be great, but something will have happened.
Do they/you understand it needs to be complete electoral reform?
We need people to come together. You
Yeah.
to do that.
OK, I'll crack on with that.
Good.
You don't need different new parties or... You just need something to believe in.
I admire you personally enormously, so it's
That's
not a personal
kind of
thing.
you. Say more
But
things like that.
They've
To be honest,
already...
I think she was talking to me then.
It all kicked off at a press conference on Tuesday. How did Theresa May begin her speech there?
Help!
Sort of the opposite. She told assembled reporters, "It's a great time to be alive." What do you think Theresa May's big mistake has been in her approach to the negotiations?
Entering politics?
Particularly with the EU negotiation.
I don't know, didn't she... Well, I've no idea.
Well, she's tried to compromise with all sides, hasn't she? Would you say, Ian, that there's a sort of uncanny parallel with the failure of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V to unify the Catholics and the Lutherans at the colloquy of Regensburg?
Now you mention it, you're spot on.
Too few people have pointed that out.
I bet Jacob Rees-Mogg pointed it out.
But nobody wants a compromise now in the Conservative Party, do they? Because there's a leadership
But
race.
nobody wants a compromise. I mean, the Parliament has not actually voted for anything that is possible to achieve, has it?
No, it hasn't
Apart
voted
from
for
no
anything.
deal. That's the only thing you've agreed.
And it won by one vote. And apparently the Tories had somebody stuck on a train. They were gutted. That's true.
Is it Chris Grayling? God, I
Better be stuck under a train.
She might have been hoping to swing voters back to the Conservatives with the Euro elections. Obviously, we don't know the results.
I think I'm going to go right ahead and assume that they've gone terribly.
For who?
For...
That's
Slightly-
appalling bias.
I think that they'll have gone terribly for slightly fewer than half of the people. And extremely well for slightly more than half of the people.
Right.
As we continue this exercise in what happens when an entire country decides to walk directly into a lamppost and then try and style it out.
Do you think, Jess, that by the time the polls close, Jeremy Corbyn will have revealed what he thinks about Europe?
Very unlikely, isn't it, really, that he'll ever reveal it, I don't think.
Do you think he wants it in or out? That sounds wrong.
Shake it all about, I think is what he's after.
Do you think he wants to be in Europe or out?
I think he wants to be out of Europe, to be perfectly honest.
I feel as though the Labour Party's policy is still, to this day, we have a Brexit plan, but you don't know her, she goes to another school.
Here's an Irish politician campaigning in the Euro elections on Twitter. He's quite clear what he wants to do. Let's have a look.
People are asking why I carry a hurley stick. Folks, elections are no more about between left and right. It's between right and wrong, good and evil. And we are really troubled in this country with state corruption. That's one of the things I intend to take care of if I come back here with the office of MEP. If I come back with MEP office, that's going. Vote number 1, Ben Gilroy for Europe. And I'm going to Europe to get our money back.
Can I just ask why you've applauded that?
Probably need to say, by the way, because there's still 45 minutes left before the polls close in Dublin, and the other 18 candidates, I'm sure, could all also break a plasterboard with a stick. And let's go back to why the audience applauded.
You thought that's the kind of strong leadership we need? None of this hopeless attempt at compromise. Bloke with a big stick whacking things.
Well, I tell you what, if you like a strong leader, who said this recently? I'll don khaki, pick up a rifle and head for the front lines to defend Brexit.
Some prick.
Mark Francois, it fits that description.
It wasn't Mark Francois.
No, it was Farage.
Oh,
It
some
was
prick.
Farage. And what's he been wearing recently, Nigel Farage?
Milkshake.
Shall we have a look at the moment where it all went wrong?
Good advert for Waterstones there, though, isn't it?
And for milkshakes.
Fundamental difference between us and American culture, really. President Kennedy, Nigel Farage.
Why milkshake? Why is that the thing people throw?
It makes a mess, doesn't it?
Well, there was a time where people were saying eggs could hurt. You know,
Yes.
when Prescott was hit
Yes.
one. I mean, an egg might hurt, whereas a milkshake, it's just a milkshake.
I
Yeah.
reckon it's because the Ramonas are in the pockets of Big Dairy.
It does give the impression that his rosette is spouting milk.
He also just said he was going to don khakis and go over and fight on the beaches. He's, you know, whinging about a milkshake. You wouldn't have him on the front line, would you?
But he might be being unfair. He might be lactose intolerant.
He's intolerant, generally.
Yes.
Other candidates of the milkshake attack trend include the UKIP MEP candidate, Carl Benjamin. Are you familiar with that gentleman, Jess?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the neckbeard that is Carl Benjamin. No, I don't think that you should throw things at politicians. I don't think that you should attack them. I think you should win by being better than them, which is what I am currently doing to Carl Benjamin. What I find absolutely fascinating about this whole furore over the milkshake is, of course, yes, you shouldn't attack people, but McDonald's stopped selling milkshakes because they were posing a threat to far-right hate preachers. And yet the videos of this man talking about whether he would or wouldn't rape me remain on YouTube to this day. So we are massively over-egging this particular pudding about the milkshakes.
Let's take a look at the controversial notice put up in a McDonald's in Edinburgh during a Brexit rally earlier this week. We will not be selling milkshakes or ice cream tonight. This is due to a police request given recent events.
That's even worse. It's the police telling them not to sell it.
It is just...
But it's only
mesmerising.
milkshakes. And you could presumably go in and buy a McFlurry.
No, it does say ice creams.
Well, and also Burger King was still selling milkshakes. This is what they tweeted. Dear people of Scotland, we're selling milkshakes all weekend. Love BK. This is the news that, at time of recording, Theresa May is clinging on to her premiership. According to one senior minister, Mrs May is refusing to budge from her planned commitments. The sofa is up against the door. But eventually the Queen will have to let her in for their regular meeting. It's not been a great week for Theresa May. In fact, tonight, she and Philip had booked a table for two at Jamie's Italian. The BBC was forced to apologise this week after, in an interview, Vince Cable used the word bollocks. To be fair, he's a very old man, and Andrew Marr was accidentally standing on one of them. Paul and Jess, have a look at this.
OK, so there's a couple died it out, like it's Jamie Oliver, who we've just mentioned. Yes, he's...
Restaurants are all shutting.
All restaurants are all shutting down. Jamie Oliver's restaurants have closed. They've gone into receivership, I believe.
That's it. Jamie Oliver blamed the company's collapse on the well-publicised struggles of the casual dining sector and decline of the UK high street, along with soaring business rates. How do you think the Sunday Times food critic, Marina O'Loughlin, described Jamie's tagliatelle?
Presumably not in complimentary terms.
Load of old shit.
Almost exactly so. She described the tagliatelle with truffles at the Jamie's in Westfield, Stratford, as a honking, salty swamp of a sauce, brown and dusty with nutmeg. Tiny chunks, not shavings, of tasteless black truffle lurk around like mouse poos in soup.
Brown and dusty with nutmeg is my Tinder bio.
What did Peter Shilton have to say on the matter?
I mean, I don't know how we ever cave unless we know what Peter Shilton one time goalkeeper's got to say.
Peter Shilton posted a sympathetic tweet. Sorry to hear Jamie Oliver restaurants have gone into liquidation. I went with my wife and grandkids to one, and I had a steak with a sauce I specially requested, which was great. So that's nice. Jamie will appreciate that, Peter. That's lovely. But he added, but the kids had pasta, which they loved, but couldn't eat as it was so bad. What recent trend may have affected the business, according to the food writer William Sitwell?
More people getting food delivered?
He said, the cost of dining has persuaded more people to cook at home and flirt with meal kits.
What's a meal kit?
It's what posh people who think that they've got no time get a load of stuff delivered to their door with, like, the right amount of spices in and then, like, pretend that they're really good at cooking because they just put things in together that had arrived on their door. It's a massive waste and a total nonsense.
Well, that is new. I thought a meal kit was a tin and a tin opener.
Do you still get truffles in tins? When did you last open a tin, for God's sake? Ordinary remark to make on public television.
What did one member of staff accidentally serve to diners in Manchester this week?
Expensive, very expensive bottle of wine.
How expensive?
Oh, like, I don't know, like £3,000 or something like that?
Even £4,500?
Yes.
Diners at the Hawksmoor restaurant, they'd ordered a bottle of red wine. It was quite expensive, they were given that. According to the Times, the error wasn't spotted until it had already been partially drunk. I bet they necked the rest pretty quickly. The owner of the restaurant tweeted, "To the member of staff who accidentally gave it away, chin up. One-off mistakes happen and we love you anyway." Adding, goodbye. When people online questioned who would pay £4,500 for a bottle of wine, the steakhouse replied, "In this case, quite literally no one." Who dropped in to help Sainsbury's celebrate their 150th anniversary?
Queen.
It was the Queen. Should we have a look?
Yeah.
Queen went and did, like, a self-service checkout.
Well, she wasn't into 6 items or less thing. So, do anything nice for the weekend?
Let's see the Queen in the supermarket.
I love the fact that was her first reaction. Yeah. She saw through the system.
Yeah. To be fair, that's how she got the Koh-i-Noor, by putting it through as a courgette.
This is the demise of Jamie's Italian. Trying to explain the collapse of the restaurant chain, the manager of one Jamie's Italian said, "Things are fairly hard." I think he means al dente. One person affected by the collapse of Jamie's Italian was former England goalkeeper Peter Shilton, who tweeted that he'd enjoyed a steak there, but his grandchildren had pasta, which they loved but couldn't eat as it was so bad. Mind you, Peter Shilton's never liked tagliatelle, linguine or ravioli, as they all scored against him at Italia 90. And so to round 2, the jigsaw of news. Buzz when you know what it is. Paul and Jess.
That's an emu. And it's on the run in Scotland. It's been seen in Aberdeen, Perth and Dundee. It runs at about 35 miles an hour and nobody can catch it. They can't try to put a saddle on it. The Archbishop of Edinburgh has been lowered down on a helicopter to try and get onto its back. So essentially that's what it is.
Do you know its name?
Louis.
He's one half of a duo of emus named Bonnie and Clyde. And it's Clyde. Where did Clyde escape from?
A zoo in Edinburgh or somebody's house?
It was a petting zoo at a care home in the Scottish village of Ecclefechan. Which I think is actually what the zookeeper muttered when he found the emu was gone.
Yeah.
What's Ecclefechan renowned for?
Its inability to cage wild birds.
Tarts.
Beg your pardon?
The Ecclefechan tart is a sort of open-top mince pie which originates from Ecclefechan. Clyde is not the first emu to go on the run in Scotland recently. Would you like to see an emu running along the A82?
Yeah, is it Julian Assange, the emu?
I don't think I would, actually.
Can we have a vote on this?
Yeah, we should have a vote. Who wants to see an emu running down the road? Everybody. Everybody.
All right, quick look at the emu. Where was it going?
We know there's a coyote behind it. Where was it going? Well, I don't know, whichever way that road is. Aberdeen.
Well, it was a trick question because I didn't tell you which way along the A82 it was going. It was going away from Loch Ness towards Glasgow.
Are you auditioning some new quiz format?
This is the surprising news about an emu at a petting zoo in Scotland. The emu was spotted running down the A82 at 25 miles an hour, but was still overtaken by a local man who realised he'd left his change on the table and a little chef in the Trossachs. Fingers on buzzers, teams. Here's another one. Paul and Jess.
This is Amazon and these sort of voice recognition systems that use female voices, and some people have complained that this might be a sexist, stereotypical thing because women, as the stereotype might go, are always telling men what to do. Is it something like that? Is it that the sort of idea behind
it? I mean, the report from UNESCO says that the default female voice normalises the idea that women are subservient, docile helpers that are available at the touch of a button.
I do know, I mean, you know, with the satellite nav most people now have in their cars, when they first came out about 15 years ago, the research showed that most men didn't want to do what a man was telling them.
Mine's Snoop Doggy Dog.
Is it?
My sat-nav, yeah.
How'd you get him to do that?
He's not got a lot on, really. Yeah.
And he knows the Birmingham area really well.
He really does. I think it's a load of rubbish, people being upset about whether it's a man or a woman's voice, really.
I don't think the worst problem of sexism in the modern era is that Siri speaks with a female voice.
No.
It's actually a male voice in this country anyway, but... What voice does your Siri have?
You've got the voice of Gladstone on yours. I'm afraid that hasn't yet been invented, sir.
And what happened this week to show that things haven't changed quite as much as they might have done?
Oh, there was a female producer who didn't take the job that she was offered because she was found that she was getting £12,000 less than a man who was doing exactly the same job.
That's right. Karen Martin, a BBC News producer, was offered the job of deputy editor for the BBC Radio newsroom, and a man was also offered it, and she was offered £12,000 less. Even though, as she said in her email explaining why she was turning it down, they were offered the same job on the same day after the same board during the same recruitment process.
Will the BBC never learn? How many times do we have to say? Pay us the same as people with balls.
Thank God, Jess, that you and I are both getting 20 grand for this appearance. That's right, isn't it?
You've got other things against you that means they wouldn't pay you as... We're in this together, Flower.
Does anyone know what prize was given to the female winners at the Asturias Squash Championships in northern Spain?
An actual squash? Like a butternut squash? Also...
In a way, yes. A Durex vibrator. Yes. It's sort of mechanical version of the squash. The women were delighted. Let's have a look at the delighted winners. How did feminist champions the Daily Star cover
it's the game squash.
The game squash?
Yes.
Oh, no.
What's been going on? What have you been thinking about?
He was talking about squash, the fruit, the vegetable.
As a, as a joke.
I'm terribly sorry. I made the mistake of taking you seriously. I will stop at once. Yes, of course.
The Daily Star covered the story with a sense of outrage, but it was slightly undermined by where they put the story.
It's Bonnie. As in Bonnie and Clyde. That emu's done well for himself. Done very well.
Time now for the odd one out round. It's just one between you this week. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Steve Bruce, David Cameron and E.L. James.
I think this is about books. Jacob Rees-Mogg has just written a book about the Victorians, which was very, very badly reviewed.
Which was very satisfying.
Which was, yes, but fair. I thought a number of people said it was the worst book ever written by anyone on any subject, which I thought was a good, sensible, balanced review. So anyway, he's produced a book. David Cameron's book's finally appearing. Mm-hmm. This one was delayed for ages because it wouldn't be a good time, what with Brexit and everything. And in the end, the publishers thought, well, we might as well publish it now. It's always a bad time.
E.L. James has a new book.
Who is E.L. James?
E.L. James wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
And the sequels thereof. Steve Bruce.
Who's Steve Bruce?
Steve Bruce is a football manager. Association football is a sport. They've all written a book, apart from David Cameron, whose book is going to come out and he's been working on it for ages.
Together, you've got the right answer. They've all got terrible book reviews.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apart from David Cameron, whose book isn't out yet, but people are already being mean.
Right.
It's going to be called For the Record.
That's right.
And what sort of reception has his book had already?
Bad. Very bad. Everybody's been really narky about it and said it's going to be awful.
One Twitter user said, I believe the audiobook version features someone sobbing. While another said, will the hardback come without a spine as well? And you mentioned Ian Jacob Rees-Mogg's book on the Victorians. Do you know what Dominic Sandbrook in The Times said about that?
No, but please quote it.
He said it was staggeringly silly, absolutely abysmal, and Rees-Mogg is a man with all the wit, style and literary elan of a Bulgarian boiler salesman. Steve Bruce, the football manager, writes niche crime novels.
Cool.
He's written 3. Here's the first one. Striker.
That's an enormously big player.
It revolves around fictional football manager Steve Barnes, who's investigating the kidnapping of the club's janitor. Would you like to hear some of Bruce's work? Here's an extract from Striker. Our hero, Steve Barnes, is being taken at gunpoint to a secluded hillside. Fearing imminent death, he muses, I could make out the reservoirs made to provide water to the big cities of Lancashire. These reservoirs, dotted everywhere in hidden valleys, are themselves fed with water from upland streams. The previous summer had been a wet one, and the streams were torrents still. In order to facilitate the collection of this hill water, the authorities, the Water Board, had constructed concrete watercourses. These allowed faster and more efficient collection of rainwater. Oh, for God's sake, just shoot him already.
It's a lot better written than E.L. James's book.
Yes, why has her book been criticised, her latest one?
It's disappointingly good.
No, apparently it's not very good.
Is it not sexy? Because the previous ones were sexy, so maybe people are like, this isn't sexy.
Well, I tell you what, we'll have a look at the cover, I'll tell you the plot, and you tell me if you think it's sexy.
That's a nice cover.
It's quite a sedate image, isn't it, for a sexy book? Just the river...
Doesn't look very sexy, does it?
Trees. It revolves around Albanian cleaner Alessia Damaci, who is a concert-level pianist and chess grandmaster with synesthesia. The I newspaper's Cat Brown summed it up by saying, you will laugh a lot during this book, not in a good way. 50 Shades of Grey is genuinely one of the funniest books I've ever read.
I have only read the first one, and I gave that up halfway through, but it is total comedy.
I have favourite lines from that book. As I turned to face him, I saw he had his erection firmly in his grasp. That happened to me once in a greengrocer's. Not sexy. And they've all had their books panned by critics, except for David Cameron, whose book's been savaged before it's even published. According to the Mail, E.L. James's latest erotic novel has been badly received, and the author has been subjected to a furious backlash. Someone forgot the safe word. Time now for the Missing Words round, which this week features as its guest publication, Box and Fiddle. This is the magazine of the National Association of Accordion and Fiddle Clubs. I'm assuming the Fiddle Club was keen on a merger, as it was attracting the wrong kind of membership on its own. And we start with, woman takes day off work after what?
Meeting with Sir Graham Brady.
More musical than that.
More music. Woman takes day off work after Andrew Lloyd Webber creates a musical about her. Tina the Cleaner. Don't cry for me, Tina the Cleaner.
Woman takes day off work after having too much fun at the Shetland Accordion and Fiddle Festival. Next, train company may cancel what after passengers what?
Services after passengers insist on using them.
I think that's close enough. Train company may cancel complimentary snacks in first class after passengers eat too many. So they weren't using the services. First-class passengers have been eating too many biscuits and crisps on trains between Norwich and London. I mean, to be fair, that can be a 3-day journey. And finally, what can be lonely but rewarding?
Life outside the European Union.
That won't go out.
Setting up a one-person criminal organisation.
The answer is fiddling solo can be lonely but rewarding. This is from Box and Fiddle, the only magazine where it's possible to find this utterly harmless, utterly innocent sentence. We did have a fiddler in the family, my Uncle Donald. So the final scores are Ian and Ahir 5, Paul and Jess 7.
Outrageous. Well done.
And I leave you with news that after Tom Daley advertises for a new synchronised diving partner, there's not the quality of applicant that he hoped for. At ITV's new Disneyland-style theme park, there's disappointment when visitors are greeted by the characters of Ant and Dec. And in Kensington, thanks to a special meeting of Beatles fans, we now know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. Good night.
Good night.
Imagining our future. Thrilling family drama with a star cast in the epic Years and Years on BBC iPlayer. Guess who's telling the truth? That's the end of the game I know you like to play. Would I Lie to You on BBC One in just a moment.
Sometimes